The 2023 NFL season has had some amazing games, despite only being around for 8 weeks. These games had everyone at the edge of their seats at some point, and they all probably came down to one big play or one huge mistake. So in this video, we're gonna be taking a look at the 10 best games of the season so far. So right away at number 10, Rams vs Colts. This game didn't start out as a close one, as it looked like the Rams would have a pretty easy win. They ended the first quarter leading by 14, and despite slowing down in the second period, they still managed to head into the break with an impressive 20-0 lead over Indianapolis. However, the second half was a totally different story. The Rams scored a field goal, but Indy quickly replied with a touchdown, heading into the fourth quarter, trailing by 15. And then Anthony Richardson started playing like the top 5 pick he was, and scored back-to-back touchdowns, tying the game up with just under 2 minutes left to go in regulation. So we're heading on to overtime, with the Colts having all the morale and crowd on their side. But it only took 8 plays for the Rams to march down the field and score what was a walk-off touchdown to end the comeback hopes with a 29-23 final score. For number 9, I have Falcons vs Packers. This week the matchup over in Atlanta got as close as it could get. The game started out quite slow, with the Falcons scoring just a field goal in the first quarter, but then it kinda got going, with both teams scoring touchdowns to head on to halftime with a 10-9 game. Starting out the third quarter, the Packers took little to no time to extend their lead to 8 with a Jordan Love touchdown pass. The Falcons got within 5 points, but before they even realized it, Jaden Reed was in the end zone for the second time, giving the Packers a pretty comfortable 24-12 lead heading onto the last quarter. But then it all crumbled for Green Bay. Atlanta quickly scored a touchdown, and after a field goal, they were trailing by just 2 points with 8 minutes left to go in the game. The Packers had a shot at sealing the game with a 4-1 conversion, but a false start by Jordan Love completely killed the opportunity. Atlanta then marched down the field and scored a game-winning field goal to complete the comeback and end the game 25-24. Now at 8, Bears vs Broncos. October started with the right foot with this matchup. Denver got into Chicago with an early 7-0 lead thanks to a Russell Wilson touchdown, but once the second quarter got going, the Broncos quite literally left the game. Chicago scored 3 touchdowns in a row to get themselves up 21-7 in dominant fashion heading into the break. It's now the third quarter, hopes of a comeback for Denver, and once again, touchdown Bears. But hey, the Broncos were still able to score a touchdown late in the quarter to at least make it seem like it wasn't a blowout. Well, the Bears probably got scared because the Broncos somehow scored back-to-back touchdowns in the fourth quarter to tie the game up at 28 points. The Bears had no momentum whatsoever, and so they did nothing in the last few minutes of the game, allowing Denver to kick a game-winning field goal, completing an insane 21-point comeback. Final score 31-28. Moving on to number 7, Cardinals vs Giants. Week 2 of the season saw an amazing game in this one. The Giants continued their week 1 bad streak and ended the first quarter down by 7. Arizona kept the foot on the throttle and managed to take a 20-0 lead heading into halftime. Daniel Jones scored a 14-yard touchdown to start out the third quarter, but Arizona immediately replied to get themselves up by 21. But after that, New York came to life. Down by 3 scores, the entire team came to play and scored 3 touchdowns to get the game tied up at 28. Suddenly, the Giants had made a comeback and the Cardinals didn't look nearly as strong as they did during the first half of the game. The Giants got one final drive and made the most out of it as they scored a game-winning field goal to seal the deal 31-28 after the Cardinals failed to do anything more on their consequent drive. At number 6, Commanders vs Eagles. This game was probably way closer than people expected, but when it comes to divisional matchups, anything can happen. The Commanders started out strong and took a 7-point lead, which was then replied by a Philly touchdown tying the game up. Washington kept the foot on the throttle and soon enough found themselves leading the game 17-7, preparing to pull off a huge divisional upset. The Eagles didn't do much the rest of the half and went into halftime still trailing 17-10. The third quarter was all Philly though, as they completely shut Washington down to take a 21-17 lead. The final period was amazing, as simple as that. Washington tied the game up, but AJ Brown came to town and scored what seemed to be a game-winning touchdown with under 2 minutes left to go. Still, the Commanders somehow marched down the field and with no time left on the clock, scored a game-tying touchdown to send the game to overtime. They failed to move the ball in their first OT drive and it was quickly over, as Jake Elliott kicked a game-winning field goal to end the thrilling matchup 34-21. Last week, this game was also quite close, but I didn't want to repeat the same matchup twice in the video, but honorable mention to the other Eagles-Commanders game. Just getting into the top 5, Lions vs Seahawks. The first few minutes of the game went by without anything interesting, but Seattle kickstarted the game with a Kenneth Walker touchdown. The Lions made sure to let them know who they were, and so they scored 2 touchdowns as a response. Walker got his second touchdown of the game, and well, a couple of more points were put on the board before heading into the fourth quarter with a 17-21 game, Detroit in front. Seattle somehow managed to score back-to-back unanswered touchdowns and had the Lions against the ropes. Still, Detroit wasn't gonna go down this easily, and after scoring a touchdown, they tied the game up as time expired to send this game to overtime. 31-31 was the score, and the Seahawks got the ball first to try and win it. And so, it only took Geno Smith and company 9 plays to take care of business. Tyler Lockett touchdown, and the Seattle Seahawks win 37-31. At number 4, Commanders vs Broncos. Denver had a solid first drive and got an early lead over Washington, who could only reply with a field goal, score being 7-3. Then Russell Wilson threw an absolute dime to Marvin Mims Jr. to take a 14-3 lead by the end of the first period. The Broncos scored another TD, but Logan Thomas got the first one of the day for the Commanders, and after a field goal by Washington, we certainly had a close game at the end of the second quarter. Coming back from the break, Washington scored right away to tie this game up, but the Broncos still got some points to end the quarter, leading by 3. However, the fourth quarter was a whole different story. Washington scored 2 unanswered touchdowns to get an 11-point lead with time winding down. The Broncos scored with just under 2 minutes left to go, but it all seemed kinda over. Still, they somehow stopped Washington and got the ball back with less than a minute left to go. The offense didn't do anything, but Russell Wilson still found Brandon Johnson for a touchdown in a miraculous Hail Mary. Denver was back, comeback incoming, and then they failed the 2-point conversion. No overtime this time around, as the Broncos painfully lost 35-33 on the road against the Washington Commanders. In third place, Chargers vs Vikings. The Vikings literally fumbled away their first drive, and that gave LA the chance to score the first point of the matchup as a response. Back-to-back punts, and the Minnesota Vikings tied the game up at 7. Couple of scores went by, and the game was 14-10 at halftime with the Chargers leading. LA missed a field goal early in the second half, but still scored a touchdown on their next drive, but it was quickly overshadowed by a Minnesota TD the very next drive. The Chargers had a bad drive after that, and that gave the Vikings a shot at taking the lead, which they did and got themselves up 24-21. The very next drive, the Chargers took a 4-point lead. The game was still pretty close, and the Vikings marched down the field, but eventually got stopped and turned the ball over on downs. But then the Chargers did the exact same thing and failed to convert a 4th down and 1 in their own territory. Minnesota had another shot at it, but ball don't lie. Interception thrown by Kirk Cousins, and the 28-24 score remains, with the LA Chargers going home with a victory. Moving on to second, Dolphins vs Chargers. This week 1 matchup was definitely one for the ages. An early fumble led to a Chargers touchdown, but Miami quickly replied with a rushing TD by Raheem Mostert. The Dolphins then took a 3-point lead, but Justin Herbert and company got right back ahead in the middle of the second quarter. Miami scored another touchdown, and after both teams exchanged field goals, we headed over to halftime with the Chargers trailing 17-20. Starting out the third quarter, LA got the lead right back and picked off Tua in order to get some pressure off. However, they somehow ended the third quarter trailing 27-24, but scored a touchdown just as the fourth quarter got going. Couple of field goals went by, and Miami finally scored what would be a game-winning touchdown with under 2 minutes left to go, placing themselves up 36-34. LA would fail to do anything more in the game and would then fall to 0-1 in the season. And at number 1, Browns vs Colts. Cleveland started out hot with a Jerome Ford 69-yard touchdown to start things out, but Indy wasn't gonna go down easily, as they scored back-to-back touchdowns as a response. The second quarter was insane. I mean, they were literally 27 points scored in it. 2 touchdowns by the Browns, 1 by the Colts, and a couple of field goals as well for Cleveland, which was good enough to grant them a 27-21 lead heading into halftime. Start of the third quarter, the Browns extended their lead, but the Colts swiftly got back into the game, setting the score at 30-28 at the start of the last quarter. Indy kicked a field goal to take the lead, but Cleveland replied immediately. Then the Colts scored what seemed to be a game-winning touchdown with just over 5 minutes remaining, but it wasn't over just yet. 38-33 Indianapolis with the lead, the Browns marched down the field, and with the help of some doubtful calls, managed to put an end to the matchup with the score, ending the game winning by 1, 39-38. Anyways, that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.